Welcome to Costly Conversations. So today we're going to have on a guest who is I would say one of the rising stars in the firearm space, a guy called Mike from Tactical Considerations. What does it kind of require to be a content creator, digital creator, YouTuber? There's all sorts of different names for it. What are some of the things that Mike wants to talk about that he really can't talk about on a gun channel? Like who is Mike behind the scenes? Those are the things that I'm interested in, and I'm hoping that you'll be interested as well. You do want to stick around till the end because we are going to be having our first ever ammo giveaway sponsored by obsidiantactics.com. And definitely you want to be a part of that. All you have to do is the easy thing, just follow the instructions. It's super simple. But let's go ahead and get into it. Welcome to Costly Conversations. Mike, Tactical Considerations.
Oh,
Man, thanks for coming on the show.
yeah, no problem, man.
Yeah, dude. So I have a whole list of things I want to ask just because me being a younger YouTuber in the game, with the Armed Atlas channel and even this channel, I have a lot of questions, mainly for me, and I'm hoping other people can enjoy it as well. But I do want people to, if maybe they haven't heard of you before, or maybe they've watched your stuff and they enjoy you, maybe they haven't seen you on any other podcast and they want to know a little bit about your backstory. Can you take like two
Uh,
minutes and just tell us how you got into it?
yeah, so it's kind of funny. I got into doing YouTube stuff. Basically, somebody dared me, right, that I couldn't produce content better than something I was watching, and I was like, well, it may take me time to learn, but I'll do it. So it was literally a dare by one of my ex-military buddies that I'll leave nameless. Um, so that's it. It's kind of a funny story. I never saw myself doing YouTube videos or anything like that because I'm just not an artistic person. Like I didn't know how to use a camera. I didn't know audio editing. 100% had to watch a ton of other great YouTube content creators that taught camera and editing and all that to learn how to do it all.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because if anyone ever meets you in person, and I'll say this, and this is not a dig, this is just my observation. A lot of guys you meet in the gun space, they are like 4'2". They're like real little,
Mm.
and when they meet you, you're just like towering above me. What are you like 6'3" or something like that?
Yeah, I'm like 6'4".
Yeah, see, exactly. Just like built like a tank, and you don't look like the prototypical gun tuber. You're not, you don't have the frame of Lucas Botkin, and really, you look like an ex-marine or something like that, or whatever. Not to spend too much time talking about your physique. That said, when when people meet you, it's like if someone were to guess what you do, someone might be like, "Oh yeah, he's probably in the military. He's probably a cop or something like that." So, kind of seeing that, oh, this guy's on YouTube, it almost doesn't quite make sense. Like he's a YouTuber, he's a you know videographer, he's an editor, he's all these different things because that's what YouTubers are. But I want to know what are some of the skills that you picked up outside of YouTube that you feel like translate into being a gun tuber because that's what you focus on is firearms.
Yeah. Um, so I joined the Army at 18. I was lucky enough that I got picked up out of basic training and got to try out for special operations. So I served my entire military service in the Second Ranger Battalion up in Fort Lewis, Washington, which was an amazing experience. When I got out, I finished up college and thought I wanted to be, a business banker, make all kinds of money, and drive BMWs and have fun, which was great for about I don't know the 3 years that I was in college. And then right when I graduated, I was either going to go back in or I was going to go into law enforcement. And based on something that happened in my personal life, I decided to stay home and go into law enforcement. And I've been a police officer for 17 years.
Nice. Okay, so you did the time in the military and the and serving as a longtime police officer or law enforcement. Do you feel like that gives you some sort of edge or kind of gives you knowledge about guns. I know a lot of cops don't really shoot a lot of guns, so like,
Yeah.
can we be clear about that? But
Yeah.
is there anything about those career paths that kind of gives you an edge on like, okay, this is what I want to see. This is what I think is considered excellent YouTube slash content creation.
Yeah. So for me, when I look at creating something for YouTube and based off of my experiences in life, one, being in the military and special operations unit, you have like literally unlimited budgets for the most part. And then being in law enforcement, you have limited budgets, and then just being average citizen out there that loves to have guns, you're on whatever your budget is. So when I look at things, I look at them from very different perspectives. I look at them from a perspective of what would I actually use this thing for? Is this something that's like completely civilian, concealed carry capable, competition capable, but maybe not like a law enforcement duty item? Or is this an item that is legit, a $3,500 night force scope that some sniper in the military is going to use that needs that ultimate durability, that ultimate reliability, but they don't have to pay for it. So obviously it's nice that they get to have it. So I look at things from those perspectives, and having done, the military, law enforcement, and just I'm just an average dude, right? Like that gives me a little bit more perspective. But you're right, like most cops, even a lot of military people don't know anything about guns. They're issued a gun, and some of them can shoot those well, some of them can't. Um, but it's a job, so most of them don't get into the nitty gritty of the weapon itself unless you're like, one of the 18 series, weapon sergeants in SF, or some specialized unit that needs to know all these foreign weapons or different things like that. But average military dude, average cops don't know a ton about guns. I just really am interested in the inner workings and the mechanics and why things work better for certain people, because fitting something to somebody like a handgun can be extremely important for performance and the end accuracy and usability of that weapon system. So that's kind of how I kind of go up about things, because I've bought all the wrong stuff. I've bought the expensive stuff or things that I didn't need that I thought I needed, and I've wasted my money over the years. And I just try to help people not waste theirs, because money don't grow on trees, right?
No, you're absolutely correct, and it's interesting because like what you're saying resonates with me because I think in firearms culture and 2A culture and instructor culture, there's this idea like, hey, listen, if you're gonna buy a gun, you need to buy literally the most reliable, most performance, you know, uh, um, driven weapon. And if you hang around enough with like competition shooters, they're going to start recommending competition guns, right? And then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so it's a race to the bottom of your wallet on what you need to buy in order to, I guess, either look cool, because I mean that is what's important on the internet, is looking cool, but also, well, this is literally something that you could run over with a tank and it would still work. And maybe that's not the best use for most people's money. I'm not going to say yes or no, but it sounds like that's your philosophy when it comes to reviewing guns.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love things that are bulletproof. Zombies are coming. I'm the world to end. I need and I've got those. I've got a couple of those items as well.
For sure.
But for the average person, and I never say just as good, right? Because that kind of thing gets a little tropey. Well, mine's just as good, but there is something as good enough for your purpose. Um, I remember when all I could afford was a Ruger 1022
Hmm.
and a used Smith and Wesson SDVE 40 that I paid a couple $100 for. That was a law enforcement trade-in, and that's all I could afford. I had that tapped me out, right? But I needed a rifle, right? A small little 22 that I could shoot a little bit longer for, maybe do some little farm accuracy hunting or something for gophers,
Oh, for
and then I
sure.
needed a pistol to carry around. Um, so I've been on the end of the spectrum, and I'm on the end now where I've been smart with my money, and I could buy a Staccato every month if I wanted one, but that's just, I mean, it would be stupid. But um, there's good enough for a purpose, right?
Hmm.
I don't need to outfit every pistol I have with an RMR. Hall Sun Gun do me just fine on most of them, right? So that's something I take into account too, because having been in a position where money has literally been like, am I paying rent or am I buying food?
Mm.
So, I've been there.
And I would say a lot of us are there right now because of the
Yeah.
way the economy's been going, with the way inflation has just been going insane. Like we went to,
Yeah.
a Whole Foods place the other day and bought a few groceries, and it was like, dang, that's $100. Like we didn't get anything. We got like 10 items. What's going
Well,
on?
the problem was it was a Whole Foods, man.
Right. That's my first problem, right? Trying to eat right. But
Yeah.
I mean, this is where we are today, and it's like, okay, so we there's this conversation that goes around. It's like, okay, well, what's the budget gun? If you had to pick like a Sky or like a High Point, or name another gun that's kind of really entry level, like one of the early Taurus Gs, like the G2C or whatever. And
Yeah.
if you had to pick one, like what would you get? And I'm actually curious to know your thoughts on that one. But the idea is like, man, some people are actually out here really struggling. And to
Yeah.
say like if you don't have an acro on your gun, an aim point acro P2 or something like that, which is way too expensive, then you basically have an inadequate setup. That's not really going to jive with a lot of people, and I think that might even scare them out of the firearm space. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And here's the weird thing about the Second Amendment community or the military community or all this thing that's molded into what we do. It is probably one of the most welcoming communities you'll ever go into. Like when we met at the GunCon event, me, you, and Jonathan from Tactical Toolbox ended up in the rental car eating lunch together inside the car to get out some AC, right?
Right.
Um,
Great time.
and you'll meet amazing people, whether it's at the range or anywhere else. But at the same time, we love to savagely meme each other and
Mm,
pigeonhole people based on what they have on their system or whatever it is. And I get it. I mean, I've got some cheap stuff in the safe too, and then I've got some expensive stuff, but it's a big turnoff. It is, and then I just want to see people have the best they can afford that's reliable, and that's kind of what I, tell people. Hey, maybe you got to deal with a $199 red dot on that pistol rather than a $600 RMR, and that's okay if it works for your purpose and it's holding zero, then you're good.
right. And I think that is the question, and I've been really excited because Gideon Optics, we saw them at GunCon, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm really interested in really like put that on another budget gun and you know drop it once or twice. Nothing crazy.
Yeah,
We're not like dropping it directly on the optic like old Aaron Cowan, but
Eric Allen.
just kind of see if it holds up. If I can say like, hey, I've tried this. I put 500 rounds through it. I've dropped it once or twice. It works or it doesn't work. Don't spend your money on this. This will get you killed. Like this will actually get you killed, not the that'll get you killed
Yeah,
thing that gun guys like to do.
yeah, yeah. And here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand too is I've been in the game long enough that I know a lot of these manufacturers. So unless it's a uh, something that's going to be either considered with very compliant deals with uniforms, happen to be made in the U.S., but say like a contract item for the military where it has to be U.S. sourced or made. Um, Most of these optics are coming out of the same like five or six factories in Guangdong province or whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
in China, and they're just built to a varying different standard. And I actually had one of the companies, I was able to get hold of one of their engineers, and I had him do a 3D rendering of the actual carriage in a red dot to show how they're made differently to be a little bit more durable if they get dropped. But when people talk about drop testing, like I love to see those videos too. I've done them. And then my next question is, how many times have you dropped your pistol? Right?
I'm not sure I've ever actually dropped a gun like ever outside
I've
of like
carried
just a
I've carried a
light
gun.
toss.
Yeah, so I've carried a gun almost my entire adult life for a living, right? Once. I dropped my pistol once on accident. I've had other people like knock them off tables, things like that. So I get that
Mm-hmm.
it happens. Um, but out on the range, there was one time where there was a part failure and that gun went, and I was like, well, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Holster failure issue. And other than that, I don't see a whole lot of people dropping their guns unless it's on purpose for a video. So I love the durability, but again, like, are what we testing things for a realistic purpose, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And kind of to go back to that earlier question, if you had to buy, if all your money disappeared tomorrow and all your guns were removed from you, and you had to buy the cheapest gun possible, because it's either you buy the cheapest gun possible or you spend $5 extra and now you can't eat for a week or something crazy, if that or that, those crazy questions. What would you just go ahead and pick up just to kind of hold you over if you were in that situation?
What was the budget?
Uh, let's say under $300, because that's isn't that the baseline that a lot of guys like to stick at, right?
Yeah, so um, I've seen and tested a lot of guns in that price range, um, from High Points, Taurus, um, a lot of the guns that we call evidence locker guns because
Mm-hmm.
they're going to end up in an evidence locker one day on a homicide scene. And what I'll tell you right now is I've seen a lot of High Points and I've seen a lot of um, cheaper guns, Skies, things, Keltecs in that price category do their job out there in the real world. Now, is it a combat gun? Absolutely not. If you don't take care of it, it's going to fail a lot faster than most others. But in the testing that I've done with a couple thousand rounds, if I had to choose the most budget-friendly pistol that I'm like okay with carrying, it would probably be a Taurus G3X or a G3C, because I've had, I think, 4 or 5 of the G3 series now, and I've got a couple thousand rounds between the compact, the full size, the tactical, and the X model to feel comfortable that if I had $257 for one, that I could go buy that and carry it as long as I proof it on the range right. The caveat is you have to take it out, proof it, make sure it runs on your carry or duty ammo, and then make sure you clean it, lubricate, take care of it, all those things. And that's really what it is because I've seen broken guns right out of the box from Glock, from Smith, whatever other manufacturer. Things happen. They're mechanical devices, right? Anything mechanical could fail. I don't care how good it is, how perfection it is. Things happen in a manufacturing process. That has to do with quality control, which is where some of those cheaper brands, the quality control comes way down, and that's where you end up with, you might get a lemon,
Right.
and you that's up to you as the end buyer to proof that item.
Right. And a lot of guys really hate the idea of having to do that. They think, oh man, if if you have to break in a gun or run 100 rounds through it before you're confident, then it's a bad gun. I don't want it. Give me a Glock that you literally just put a couple rounds in it and send it out to the streets, and you'll be, it'll run 100% out of 100%. And you just said that you've encountered guns from reputable, brands like Glock, Smith.
Yeah,
Not saying one or the other, but that weren't what they should have been, and they are the brands that get military contracts, are on the sides of guys out there riding around in patrol cars, and yet you can get lemons. Like, the manufacturing process isn't perfect.
yeah,
It's not like some of these boutique brands where they literally go hands on and make sure everything runs, and then do a quick test on it before they send it to you. They just can't.
yeah. Not only that, but a lot of people forget, they're more than happy to go out and spend $100,000 on a Ford F-350 and do the maintenance on that. But it's the same thing with any mechanical device. You need to inspect it and do maintenance on it. The one Glock specifically, that it was an enigma, right? You don't hear of Glocks failing out of the box much, but
You don't,
the
but
connector was broken right at the fold, and the gun, there was no trigger. It was dead. We were
wow,
like literally calling everybody, like, "Hey, have you ever seen this before?"
that's
So,
crazy.
yeah,
That is nuts. I've seen Glocks have really weird failures, and a lot of the times it's aftermarket parts. Somebody put it in a new barrel and it just blew up on
yeah.
them, mainly because it's
Well,
got bad ammo and stuff like that. But
Gen 4s had a lot of problems when they came out. People
mhm.
are quick to forget that, but I think Mr. Guns and Gear and some other people did some videos. There were a lot of problems in the initial launch of Gen 4.
Yeah,
I don't think that the new 380 one that he got or whatever wasn't running either. Um, so
yeah,
it happens.
yeah, it definitely does. And like you said, it's a mechanical device. Here's the thing: Toyota comes out with a new car. Every year there's a new version of the old cars, and they come out with brand new
Yeah,
versions. And everybody knows that. Well, they should know that you can have critical failures, like your brakes don't work. No reason, they just don't work. So definitely, if there's anybody listening, I would say just please test your gun. If there's a gun that you have that you've never run, but you have it, put some rounds through it. Make sure it works.
Oh, absolutely. I would never carry a pistol. I don't care what the brand name is or their reputation without personally proofing it.
Right. Because you never know. You
Yeah.
just never know. Um, I actually do have some questions here that I did want to make sure um, that we ask you. One is talking about what do you consider when you or let's skip to this question. What are some misconceptions that your audience has, or the general like gun people audience, when when you're making content about guns or anything really? But what are some misconceptions that they have about, I guess, what goes into your content?
Um, I guess like, there's always misconceptions about that you get everything for free. Trust me, you don't.
Right.
Um, there are some guys maybe that get everything for free. And the misconception is, I think on a lot of people, um, there's that word shill that people love to throw out.
Mm,
And I'm like, yeah, I can't deny it. There are people out there that, charge for every video they do. In most of the bigger YouTube channels, and I'm not talking 2A specifically, but you think these guys like Peter McKinnon and all these dudes are doing, $5,000 production, $10,000 production value videos, and they're doing that out of the goodness of their own heart. Like, no, it's a business. And if you don't treat it like a business, I mean, I have, 30 or $40,000 worth of camera gear and lighting and machines and editing computers, and you have to find a way to monetize that. And I do that through either sponsors on the channel or affiliate marketing on the back end. And some other guys choose that up front, and it's okay. We're a capitalist society. As long as you're honest with your audience, that doesn't matter. Um, so I think those are two huge misconceptions. Um, Probably the other biggest one that I would see is um, that that everything that we get is handpicked when somebody sends us something. That's could be true, could not be true. I know I've helped a couple companies with some R&D stuff, and that's kind of like a non-disclosure agreement. And they sent me something, and let me tell you, that was not handpicked. And then it's
mm,
like, hey, this is what you need to fix. And then they ultimately did those, instituted some changes. But that's the other thing too. So we get guns generally for me, they're right off the shelf. So it's gonna work or it's gonna not, and that just kind of goes on camera. Like the bull armament or burl armory video I released today. There's all kinds of range flubs in there, and the one malfunction that I did have was completely caught on camera and stuff like that. So I think those are probably the biggest three things when it comes to my mind.
it's interesting that you say that because I think there's a misconception that a lot of guys have just kind of scouring the internet and seeing other guys do work in the comment section just in general. Like I'm a big comment reader. Like I read all my comments for now until it just gets to a point
Yeah.
where I just can't. And
I
I
respond to
love
every comment.
that's awesome. So one thing that I've seen is like, man, especially from other guys in like the training community, they're like, man, you guys need to show your hits, and basically there's this almost this idea that people are intentionally not showing their worst moments. And I
Yeah.
actually a recent video you actually showed where you completely just goofed a reload, just like completely missed the gun. And I was like, dang, he really put that in there. Good for him. I'm glad there's some realism because as much as you put probably a billion rounds downrange at this point, you can mess up, especially on new guns. Like
Yeah.
what was it? It was a Beretta. What were you
Yeah.
running in that video?
Well, it was probably the Beretta, but that's in the Bull Armory video today too. And that's
Mm-hmm.
anytime you change a pistol, a weapon system, a sighting system, you have to train with it. And I love that, and I actually addressed that show your hits thing. So within the Bull Armory video I released this morning, people are always like, "Oh, show your hits. Anybody can shoot fast," which I say, first of all, no, not everybody can shoot fast. So what I did in that video was I took a SIG P320X5 that had no sights on it at all, no iron sights, no optic, and I walked back to 100 yards and I shot a 12 by 18 steel plate from 100 yards with no sights, just bing, you know, um, to show kind of because I've been getting a lot of those comments like show your hits, and I show them from time to time, but do you want to stare at a paper target or do you want to stare at the item? And not only that, but I can stand there and put holes in a piece of cardboard and then show it to you afterwards. And hey, look how tight my groove is, you know. Um, so I get that too, and I kind of laugh at it like, hey man, you can go watch videos of me running the bare standards drill, which is 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, 4x6 box, 3-inch circle, 4x6 box, and I ran that sub 6 seconds clean with five, five, empty gun reload, three in the center circle. So I'm not there to prove anything, but occasionally I'll throw something like that in the video. But I love throwing the range flubs in the video
Yeah.
because it just makes me laugh, and that's how you improve. You try to go as fast as possible, and then you back off.
Yeah. I was just talking with another guy that I'm not sure if you have a relationship with, the Humble Marksman. He's out here in Dallas
Oh yeah, yeah,
as well. He's actually, I got to give him a big shout out because he invited me to my first industry event and gave me a ton
yeah,
of tips. And literally the other day, he just sent me a video on trying to how I can improve a thing or two or three here and there. And I'm just like, man, I love just how generous you guys have been in the 2A space. Really, just if I need anything, I don't feel like, man, I can't ask because it'll be too much.
yeah,
I don't ask for just everything. I'm not asking like, hey man, could you send me your gun? Like that's silly. Like don't do that. But you guys have been awesome, and he has been especially cool for making sure that I could get my foot in the door because it's
yeah.
kind of a really tight circle of guys who are making content who get recognized, and there's some guys who can get
It
in,
is
but
until it
yeah,
isn't, right?
right.
So it took me probably 2.5, 3 years, and then because one, you got to put some time in so people actually know who you are because there's so many of us out there, right? Like the humble marksman, I mean, that dude's no joke. Like I think he's
Master
either
level.
a national, a master, or a grandmaster. So
I think
he's
he's
no joke with a
national,
gun.
two-time
Yeah,
national master.
yeah.
Yeah,
And he's the first guy
skilled.
that I ever went out and tried to completely cover up my sights from 25 yards with tape, completely occlude them, and then you're shooting basically instinctively and still getting hits on 8-inch steel plates running racks. And I watched one of his videos, and I've talked to him many times since. Me and Dave talk, and I was like, that was the video that kind of changed a little bit of how I shoot based on that understanding of how your eye can focus over the slide. And that's when I went out and did that 100-yard pistol shot with no sights at all.
Man, that's you said 100 rounds with no sights. That's
100 yards with
insane.
no sights.
100 yards with no sights.
And it's documented. So I had a camera guy there that was panning around me. There was no possible way of cheating on that.
There have been some guys. I'm not going to say who have made some shots that are at 100 yards, and the steel hits way too quick. Like
Yeah,
you can
bang
hear the
ding,
sound.
bang ding.
Right. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
bro, there is a delay. Like you know that, right? Like it does. It's not a laser beam.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
buddy. Come on, man. Come on, man. You know better. But man, let me get back to some of these questions. Somebody was actually literally just asked, how much do you spend on ammo on a monthly basis? Can you share that?
Uh, oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually very lucky. So True Shot does sponsor a lot of the ammo here on the channel. So it really depends on the month. So we're in fire season out here in Arizona. It's like 118 degrees. So most of the shooting desert is closed down. So you have to go private range or private property that you're allowed to shoot on. Budget wise, and let me preface this with this is for testing purposes and a lot of things like that. So this is not what you should strive to go out and shoot. If you can't go to the range and accomplish what you need to accomplish in a couple boxes of ammo, you're probably doing it wrong. So not just, banging the trigger and doing whatever. Purpose driven, performance driven training is what you should live for. That being said, generally I will run through anywhere from in the wintertime when I'm going to the range every single week, sometimes twice a week, anywhere from 3,000 to 8,000 rounds. And there's a big variance there because am I testing a new gun or am I just testing some optics? And depending on whether it's pistol, rifle, 6.5 Creedmoor stuff or more expensive stuff, the price could be anywhere from maybe spend $1,000 a month or maybe spend $1,800 a month, depending on what ammo's coming in. And again, that varies based on ammo sponsors or something like that coming in as well. But that is merely because I'm producing YouTube videos. I would never as much as I would love to shoot all day every day, I couldn't afford that. So that's not a normal or a number to try and reach for a goal. That's merely because of what I do on YouTube.
Oh my gosh. I'm not at
Yeah,
that point yet where I'm dropping $1,000 a month, but I did just stock up on, when I say stock up, get some 223 to dump through more rifles. And it's like, geez.
yeah, yeah. And I try to on almost every gun that I run, I try to do a minimum. Uh, uh, I used to call it well over 1,000 rounds, and then I would do a second follow-up video.
Hmm.
But there are some where I've got three, four, five, or 6,000 rounds through them, like some of my blackout defense guns now, because they're my main
Nice.
squeezes. So, I shoot for the channel, and then I personally shoot for my own personal training as well. And sometimes I try
How
to
do you
mold
find
those
time to
two.
do both? Where or do you find yourself like, okay, well, we got that footage down out the way. Let's go ahead and put some more rounds downrange.
100%. So at the end of pretty much every rain session I do for YouTube, I'll pick a drill or something like dot torture or the bear standard, or I'll just do some walking and shooting, some moving and shooting, some magazine exchanges, and then dry fire. That's obviously the cheapest way to train. And if you talk
Yeah,
to competitive shooters like Humble Marksman, he'll tell you most really high level competitors can tell you it all happens at home with dry fire.
man, I was somehow I find myself complimenting guys' physique like more than I should. Is there a sign? Is this a thing? I'm playing. I love my wife. Um, and I was like, dang, bro, like your forearms are just like ripped out of your mind. Like, how are you doing this, bro? Like he's not 20 anymore, right? And he was like, yeah, that's an hour a day of dry fire for like years. I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. That is a workout, and those guns are not light. Like he's got his full size. Was it Bull Armory? What does
yeah,
he
he's
call
running
it?
like yeah, I forget which
Some
competition, and he's
competitor or something
running
like
some
that.
CZs and stuff too.
Yeah, I mean he's running some big old guns. So if you're actually practicing and actually training and getting to the point where you can go as fast as he does and like literally just swing that thing around, like
Yeah,
you're gonna get a little bit more fit than you were last week. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and he
there
wears those
there's
short shorts too.
I mean you have to. He's got the what does he call it? Big dad energy.
Yeah, big dad, BDE, big dad energy.
Oh man, he's a trip, man.
Yeah.
So question, and this is maybe an introspective question, and I hope you will answer it honestly. I think the temptation is to when you get some sort of question like this, is like, hey, what's one of your weaknesses? Well, I care too much. Something stupid like that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Who is Mike outside of YouTube?
Well, that's a very different question than the one you just posed. Uh, like I said, I've been a law enforcement guy, I've been a military guy, wife, I got family after like everybody else, but honestly, you know, people have a view sometimes because of some things I do on YouTube or the jobs I've done that I'm this like big, aggressive, angry kind of dude, but I'm probably one of the most chill people that you'll ever meet. I love to just, meet new people and like learn about new people. Traveling, I love to travel, especially overseas. One of my biggest goals is to do like a South American pyramid tour, but on foot. There's like a backpacking thing you can do there because I've traveled my whole life, not only in the military but outside the military, where Southeast Asia, over in the Middle East, and that's my big hobby. Outside of guns, I'm a car guy. I'm a gearhead, hot rods, old school cars, anything with four wheels and loud noises. Uh, don't ride motorcycles anymore. Too dangerous.
Hmm.
But I mean, that's in a nutshell, I guess that's really kind of who I am. Unless you want the whole long walks on the beach kind of speech.
No, you don't. You don't have to. Get that deep with me. But I definitely can appreciate you wanting to travel and get outside the country a little bit and do some things. Because a lot of guys, when you ask them like, "Hey, where have you been?" until they get into the industry, they've literally never left their hometown. I know a lot of people who have never left like a 50-mile radius, and it's like, dang,
Yeah,
that's crazy. But you get out of the country and you can have a better appreciation for what you have back home, or the country that you live in, or maybe the country that you go to. You have a great appreciation for that. Like, oh, I think you guys went to Israel recently. Am I right?
I was not in Israel.
Oh,
No.
okay, no. Where
Yeah,
was it? That's
I haven't been to Israel. I've been all over that side of the world, everywhere. We were just recently in Cabo,
Okay, yeah, it was
Cabo San Lucas, but
completely different place.
it's only 7,000 miles in the wrong direction.
Ooh,
But no, we try to leave the country a minimum once a year, me and my wife.
yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
and
That
me,
is,
because I'm huge into like culture, like I want to see the ancient cultures, and I want to see all the little different things and the pyramids, and then all those crazy things. I love going to see that and learning about 1,000-year old, 2,000-year old, 5,000-year old societies, because it's just something that always stuck with me, history for some reason.
yeah. It's really interesting. I've been noticing recently that a lot of like modern architecture kind of sucks. And if you like look at National Geographic, you're like, dang, wow, like these South American pyramids are really cool looking. Like that is cool. Like
Yeah,
you go to certain places like in Europe, and you're like, man, some of this like Gothic architecture is just like
yeah,
that is really cool. And you go to the Middle East, and there's some structures and designs that are just mind blowing. And a lot of the modern stuff just kind of sucks, which is weird. And I never thought I'd find myself saying that, but I just kind of paid attention for 2 minutes, and I was like, ah. Do you have you traveled anywhere where you're just like, wow, their modern stuff is just top shelf. Like this is really like cutting edge architecture. They're doing things that I wish we could do in my hometown.
one of the coolest places I ever was got to hang out for a while in Singapore,
Hmm.
um, which is like very modern. Um, and there's a lot of really cool stuff over there, because you kind of see the merging of two completely different societies. Like,
Hmm.
it was British occupied, and then they left in, like, I think the late 60s or early 70s. Might have been like 69 or 72 something. And then you have kind of an ancient culture from all over Southeast Asia in Singapore. And you have this like massive skyscrapers and structures, and you have some old elements and some new elements of society, and that stuff's really cool. And then up into Canada as well. We since we were in Fort Lewis, we used to go to Canada all the time, and there's a lot of really cool architecture up there, very kind of European influence, obviously. Um, Whereas, Arizona, everything here is chicken wire, stucco, and plain Jane. So, you know, it's it's nice to see different stuff. But those are probably the two places where I saw some of the coolest stuff.
Yeah. Somebody in the comment section just said, because for the podcast listeners, this is a live show, and you should jump over and join us live from time to time. I think you'll enjoy it. But somebody was just saying that the United States is a young country. Walking the streets and being somewhere where the buildings are about
Yeah,
600 years old is a trip. And I'd be like, yeah, that's true. Even where I grew up, they had a lot of Dutch architecture, which is completely different. Like it's not normal when you go here and you like go to New York and like, oh, skyscrapers, and you go to downtown anywhere. I was like, okay, yeah, it's a regular building. And even some like, I guess, less taken care of areas is just like a regular building with plaster, and maybe there's
yeah,
brick. Brick is like the coolest thing we can get. Um, so I think when you go places like, I guess, like Seattle or DC, and you're like, dang, wow, they really put a lot of effort into kind of building these structures. I, I I'm learning to value that a little bit more. So I really appreciate you sharing your passion in traveling and kind of some of your observations there. So if you had to stop making gun videos today, what would you do instead?
Um, well, I'm not a full-time YouTuber, right? So I still have a day job, but if I didn't, I'd probably spend a lot more time building my hot rods, because that's kind of what suffers right now. Um, but if I had to stop making YouTube videos, I wouldn't go out and try to find another job or part-time gig to occupy my time. I would probably just recoup that time and put it into another hobby, and it would probably 100% be cars, or maybe uh, I don't know. The only thing I've wanted to go back and do is I want to kind of actually go back to college, even though I have a degree already, and just take some more classes. But it really has to do with graphic design and Photoshop and photography and stuff, which would help the channel. But now that I'm doing this, it's very interesting to me, and I want to learn more about that. So that would be something I would probably do as well.
I can second that. I'm not a university kind of guy. Like I really don't enjoy sitting in a classroom or having a deadline to work on something that's not like self-imposed. I'm just
Yeah,
not like that. But the idea of like, okay, well, how can I get better at this? Oh, maybe I should pay for this guy's course, but then you never really know. Like, is how vetted is it, or is it hundred
yeah,
dollar just money pit, right? Or you could go to something like Full Sail and take a cinematography course, or if I could get on like a movie set and really kind of see how they're doing things, I feel like that would be just the coolest thing. Like not because I
yeah,
really want to be part of like Hollywood or anything like that. Like this is where I want to be, but learning some of the I guess the skills that goes into like big production, like hey, there's like three guys working on camera because it's
yeah.
required. Like that would be kind of cool. I don't know if you're passionate about the filmography or videography, cinematography side of YouTube, but it sure is interesting to say the
Yeah,
least.
it is. It quite frankly astonishes me the talent that some of these people have and the way that they can see things because I'm very knuckle dragging rock ape, nuts and bolts kind of guy. And I have friends that are the opposite and they can see something and do a couple of different little things with a camera and then they make this amazing thing out of it. And I'm like, how did you get that? That's like when I work with administrative results. I
Yeah,
filmed a couple of videos with him recently and we'll go out and we'll film and it's amazing. I love working with him and everybody else that's in that crew. It's just a ton of fun. And then when I see the final product, I'm like, how did you get that out of what we did on
right.
stage?
That I
Yeah.
know, yeah, I just saw. For those of you who haven't seen it, y'all should go watch Mike's cameo in one of the more recent administrative results video. What was that
Uh,
video on? What was the topic?
the topic was the POF lever gun. I can't
That's
remember what
right.
to call it, but
It was kind of like
it's
a
like a
space gat.
space odyssey, space
Yeah,
cowboy. Yeah,
yeah.
I can't remember the name of the movie. It was some TV show that was on in the early 2000s, and then like a movie, but it turned out hilarious, man. I
Yeah,
just
I thought it was
that
great.
that's the kind of stuff that just makes me kind of like, wow, how did this happen? You know?
He was a cop for the longest while too, and it's like,
Yeah,
man, these guys are
yeah,
way more creative than they have any like quote unquote right to be. Right? It's like where did this come from? Who were you in
yeah.
high school? And I suppose I want to ask you that. Like, who were you in high school, Mike? Were you a jock? I know you went to the military, got picked up for SF, and you kind of have to be a certain type of guy to, I guess, be cherry picked for something like that. But who were you in your own eyes?
Um, it's kind of weird. Like, I hung out with everybody. When I was really young, prior to high school, as a skater and all that stuff. It was a very different time. In like the late '90s, like there wasn't all this kind of like division and stuff. So everybody just hung out with everybody, and there was never any drama or anything. But I kind of just saw myself as like an average person, and my friends, were all into weightlifting and sports and stuff like that. So I kind of followed along with that. And I was more into the weightlifting aspect of it and the physique thing. And I actually went on to compete in bodybuilding and stuff. But, I was literally just, I wasn't like a high school football star or nothing like that. I was just kind of an average kid. I don't even think I got tall until after I was out. I think I grew like 3 or 4 inches once I got in the army. I was only like 6 foot when I went in, and I
You're
had a
kidding.
growth spurt super late. No, no,
Like, how do you explain that to the guys who are keeping up with that stuff?
yeah,
Like, hey, Mills, it looks like you're. Did you grow?
yeah.
Yo.
I came home. I think I had been in a couple years, and I came home. My mom looks up at me again. She's like, "You got taller." I'm like, "Yeah, I did actually."
Dude,
Um,
that's what the military does. Like, it's something in those shots, man.
it probably yeah, we took a lot of shots, dude. We took a lot of experimental shots went into us. That's for sure.
Right, right. Like, what are you going to say? No? Like,
Yeah,
sorry. That's not generally how it works. And man, until recently. And then a lot of guys did say no, and then a lot of guys left, which is interesting. Such a, what a time to be alive, right? I do,
yeah. We've seen some weird stuff.
yeah, recently. I mean, obviously, the world's been weird since, since I was born or before then, really. But
Yeah.
it sure has gotten interesting as of late. I want to go into a new segment, and we're going to call this Hot Take Time. Hopefully, one day we'll get some graphics that just go across the screen.
Yeah.
It's going to be a thing. So, What's one hot take that will get you in trouble with gun people, your people?
Oh, um, oh man, like saying something, anything
Yeah,
political.
yeah, like prop, preferably like in the topic of like guns. Like, oh yeah, high points are great. You know, like something like that will get you in trouble. Like for real. Like don't.
The number one thing is I believe in the Second Amendment, but
Mm,
yeah, yeah,
mm,
that's probably the for me that is the biggest thing that would get me in trouble. Um, One, and it's a stupid thing to say. It's that's like saying, "Oh, I believe in the right not to torture people, but you know,
blah.
I
Yeah.
believe in the Eighth Amendment, but unlawful imprisonment, but
Right.
so you kind of turn that back around to people, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, okay, I get it." But that for me, that's the number one thing when I hear that, I just cringe.
Right.
Right? I
Yeah. Yeah.
just
That
cringe.
is ultra cringeworthy. What's something that you
Yeah.
personally believe that would get you kind of people are gonna look at you sideways when they hear this?
Uh, um, so my audience would love this, but when I try to explain this to like even my friends, like they're outside of the gun world, and especially when I explain this to other cops, is the Second Amendment is 100% absolute. Absolute.
Yeah.
If you want to change that, there is a process. It's called an amendment, and good luck getting one. It hasn't happened in what, 100 years almost or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's still amendments that have been, they're still waiting because you can't get two-thirds vote on them and stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's something that when I say that, I have, especially non-gun people, they look at me just in shock, like, what, you think people should just be able to own nukes or what? I'm all, they'll explain to me the difference in what the Second Amendment says. Now, if you want to change that, there's a process for that. So until you change that, the Second Amendment's absolute.
Yeah. The nukes question is always really interesting because there was a guy who
That's the first
debated.
place they go. Yeah.
Right. Like when Coleon Noir and some guy who is a gun
Yeah.
owner. Um, I love that. I'm a gun owner and I think you should not have a gun. Oh, okay.
I'm
So
a I'm a
rules for
hunter
thee.
too.
Got you. Got okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Shotgun Hunter. Go. What are you doing? God, you're making us look bad. But
Yeah.
he was like, "Well, you can't have a tank." And then Collins is like, "You can
Yes,
have a
you can.
tank. You can't have a tank."
You can
And
have a
shoot,
tank. You
you
can
can
own
buy an
full auto.
RPG.
You can buy anything you want. It's just you have to ask permission
Right.
and pay that pound of flesh to the federal government or the ATF, which shouldn't
Hmm.
exist.
Right.
Um, and then you get to own whatever you want if you pay your pound of flesh.
I'll tell you what. There's one guy running for politics right now, and I've not heard anything about him until like 2 days ago. I actually know a guy who's running his campaign, Vivek Ramaswamy. Am I saying it right?
Oh, you have been, yeah, Vivek Ramaswamy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I really haven't been following him until more recently, and he said something about getting rid of all the superfluous departments of the government that are really just like enforcement agencies that are not actually law enforcement agencies, administrative agencies. I'm
100%.
like, is the ATF an administrative agency? Can they be put away? Is this guy saying he's going to abolish the ATF? Do we need to get on board with this for
So
those who will vote for
basically,
him?
yeah, so I mean he's not going to win. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got some good ideas, but most people don't realize that federal law enforcement agencies are a bastardization of the Commerce Clause,
Mm,
right? They're constitutionally not supposed to exist, right? The federal government's not supposed to do things like that, just like they weren't supposed to have an income tax, right? Um, so the government, Congress, has ceded their authority illegally to institutions like the ATF to make up rules, which is what they call them, which are de facto laws they'll put you in prison for.
hmm
Um, so again, there is a process for that. It's called an amendment to the Constitution. Um, and this is, I mean, I've had that very discussion with federal prosecutors. Like, how
Yeah.
are these agencies even existing? They're like, well, it's through the Commerce Clause, interstate commerce. That's how you can have technically these regulatory bodies, but they're not supposed to be able to make law, and that's what the Supreme Court has said with the recent rulings on the EPA and things like that. So hopefully
hmm
they'll all be stripped of their authority very soon, and whether they
Which will
abolish
piss a
them or
lot of
not,
people off
you know,
because men
they
love
will.
power. Men love
Yeah,
power.
yeah. The government's too big. It was never meant to be this big. And that's
Yeah.
why the founding fathers never wanted an income tax, because they knew that a government that could take your money and use it against you would inevitably grow uncontrollable and take away their citizens' rights, which is what they've done for the past 100 years.
Yeah, we got a guy in the comment section. Actually, the show and ammo sponsor Obsidian Tactics said Mike's out here preaching. Hashtag belt feds for home defense. Um, yeah,
Love me
why
some
not?
belt fed.
Why not? Why not?
Well,
Are you
until
responsible?
1986, until 1986, right?
Yep, yep. He actually has a quote out there that says, and I don't know if this is an original quote. He has to tell me, but pretty much that guns really haven't changed. At some point, we have to reckon with the idea that you could, at one point, literally mail order a machine gun to your home, and
Yes.
we don't have that anymore. Yet we have so much more just wanton violence and people choosing to harm other humans, whether it's with guns or not. That's not the quote. Like, go check out his page if you want the quote. Whoever's
Yeah.
listening who wants to see that, at Obsidian Tactics on Instagram. But man, let's man, there's a bunch of people asking about your car collection, so we're gonna get to that
Yeah.
right before we.
And I don't have a time limit today too. I already posted my video, so we're good.
Oh, sick, excellent. So if there's a few more minutes that we need to take, I guess we'll take that.
Yeah.
Um, ooh, here we go. What's one hot take about society and culture that will get you in trouble with the internet?
Oh man. Um, Jesus. It seems to be you can't say any single word right now, especially if it has to come down to race relations or something,
Oh yeah,
which
it's
is
it's
the
rough.
craziest thing in the world because here I am, a white guest on a black guy's channel, right? Like,
Yeah,
but anything that has to do with that seems to be a firebomb, which is crazy because, um, at least the way I see the world and the way I do things, like I just judge people on who they are and what their actions are. Like I don't care if you're purple. I mean, I've been in the military and in law enforcement with people who were black, white, gay, straight. I'm sure there were people that were trans that were in there, whatever. But it seems to be that you talk about any little sect that's divided themselves right now away from the just being an American, right? That it just turns into a firebomb situation. So I always steer away from that stuff just because, the Second Amendment for me is for everybody,
that's
even the
right.
people you politically disagree with, right? So
That that is
Michael Jordan said it best. You don't think Republicans buy shoes too? Right?
That's right. And I'm going to say this because there have been some guys, some of our colleagues, I'll say who they get weird when it comes to quote unquote socialist trying to get into the gun space. And I kind of get the idea that you don't have to train with people you don't want to train with, but
100%.
you get to a certain point on the internet and you're like, you know, F those commies and this and this and that. And it's almost like if given the opportunity, they would do harm to that group of people for the heck of it. And I'm not trying to put intent on people and say that they saying something. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it's we're in a weird place where it's like, okay, these people, that group, they've divided themselves from us. They think that we're
Hmm.
weird, and because we have some sort of ideological divide, we can't seem to get along. Like I had Arm Your Friends on with us, and they have been labeled back when they were still more operational, like a leftist group, and they have some leftist ideologies, but they're not
Hmm.
a leftist group. They're just ultra inclusive. Like they have trans people in their training club, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, I want to hear from them,
Yeah.
but
Well, I think there's
what's up with
probably
that?
too many labels too these
Mm-hmm.
days. And you get into the psychology of things. Once you label somebody and don't look at other people as human, it's very easy to do bad things. That's been shown throughout history. So there's a lot of labels and a lot of different things like that. And I don't care what your beliefs are. I don't care what you do in the comfort of your own home. And as long as your beliefs are your beliefs. Now, if you act upon certain things, then there's going to be a problem, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Um, you can believe that, aliens are in your attic and, the sky is purple and whatever you want and still do whatever you want as long as you're doing it without harming somebody else. So who cares?
Right. I've heard this statement from people who are on the left or and from the right, and I find it interesting and true, and it's it's kind of weird, and I kind of want to get your take on it. People will show a lack of education and or show that they're kind of an idiot. Like if you really break it down, like this person's kind of an idiot, like in the true
Hmm.
sense of the term. And the commentary will be, remember, this person has their vote counts the same as yours. I'm like, what's what do you mean by that? What, how do you take that when you hear it? And does that mean anything to you? I mean, or do you find that there's a lot of truth in that statement?
I mean, there is truth in it. Their vote is going to count exactly the same as
Right.
yours, right? Um, and for me, a lot of it really comes down to, we've got all this societal decay going on. Like you brought up, we
Yeah.
used to be able to get machine guns shipped to your house. Now you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all these different forms of violence. But when you really look at the statistics, we're kind of living in the safest time in human history, right? Really. But people compare it to a different thing. But when you look statistically wise, violence, it's not like, the crack wars of the 70s and the 80s and different things going on and the homicide rates that we've seen before in this country. The problem is most people will either self-identify or be labeled as something, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, and then just refuse to have even a normal conversation with somebody because, I mean, look at the state of politics in the news. They want that big, they want that quick hashtag hit or something. So that breakdown in communication or the ability to see your, you know, maybe political rival as still a human that just has different ideas, I think leads to a lot of that. I mean, it's even in people's own homes. I mean, there are like people over the past couple of years, you've seen the stories like getting divorced over, politics or, who they voted for, which is just blows my mind, right? Like,
That's
how
just
could your
pure
life be
baloney.
that shallow?
Right. You getting a divorce because he voted for some congressman? What?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I've seen those stories. I'm like, oh my God.
Jeez. Oh my goodness. That is insane. And Burnt Nugget said this. He said, "There's truth to that statement, and that is why it's important to show up if you're and vote if you're level-headed." And you know, the other side always believes that the other side is insane. So whether you're on the
Yeah.
left or the right or somewhere in between, because I don't personally
Yeah.
identify as either or. I don't think that's productive or helpful for me in my life. But I do have a certain set of values that if you
Yeah.
align with these values, I will give you a look. Period.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. And that's where I am. And I don't say that anybody else, whether Mike or anybody else, has to follow that. And I appreciate that you can agree with that. Um, but I do want to talk to you about something that's not a hot take, but I want you to think about what's one thing that you kind of wish you could talk about more, but you don't feel like your platform, whether it's the Instagram or the YouTube Tactical Considerations page, you don't really feel like that's the place where you can really kind of dive into it or do more than just a mention. Like, is there a topic or like a subject that you're just like, I wish I could talk about this, but I really just can't here.
Um, actually, one of the things I've given a lot of thought to is just kind of talking about like how to be a good person. Because I think a lot of people have forgotten that, like whether it's opening a door for somebody at a store or something. And it's kind of crazy. Like if you go out and you just do one nice thing for somebody one day, like how much it will change somebody's perspective. And this is a weird thing that I learned a very long time ago in law enforcement. I had an interaction with somebody, and it could have went very bad, but based on the way that we discussed it and how it was handled, the conversation we had afterwards was vastly different than it could have turned out. And that really rung in my head. And then I can't remember who I was talking to, but we were talking about, these big things that change people's lives, right? Or change the world or whatever. And you may not do that, but you may have an interaction with somebody that will change the course of their life or their day. And we have such little care for our fellow citizens these days. Everybody's buried in their phone. bumping into each other on the street, quick to have a road rage, quick to honk the horn, quick to call somebody a name, not knowing what the circumstance is or maybe why they're driving fast or maybe they didn't see you when they cut you off. And I think the lack of maybe humility, the lack of empathy, and the lack of like an emotional kindness has put us all in a really bad place in this country. And if I could get into more of that, I would like it, but it's kind of not what my audience is there for.
Right. And
Yeah,
that is the, I'm not going to say the trouble, because it's a gift. What we have, if you have 100 people watching a video, or 100,000 people watching a video, or a million, right? It's a gift
yeah,
to be able to speak into the homes of that many
yeah,
people. They're coming to
yeah,
you. Maybe they don't know why. Maybe they just clicked the video because it looked cool. But there's a lot of people who clicked on the video because your name popped up on their feed. They're like, "Oh, Mike
yeah,
made a video. Click," like just like that, and that's tremendous power. People don't get that, and I try to be very humble, whether the video does well or not. Like, and just understanding that. I'm sure you're the same way, and so it is a gift, but it's also kind of frustrating where it's like, man, if you wanted to pivot your whole channel overnight, you would lose
yeah,
a lot of, first of all, YouTube momentum, because YouTube is set up in a certain way where the suggestion engine, favors what you've been doing, and
yes,
making sure that your audience can be fed the videos that they are accustomed to and that they will click on. If they will click, they will get served that video. That's just the way it works. But
yeah,
on the other side, if Mike said, "Hey, you know what? I'm seeing some stuff and it says like, hey, maybe you had like a friend or family member who is going through a medical time that's serious, and it's like, man, I wish they would have eaten better. Like they were eating terribly, and I think, and if you want to like, I'm gonna go on a campaign just talking about eating healthy. Like you can't do that. Your channel will die like
yeah.
tonight.
You can find ways to sneak certain things into videos.
Hmm.
That's like I've talked about my range kit a few times and how I always bring extra eye pro and ear pro because I've been out on the range where literally a father and son drove up and he was taking his son shooting for the first time. They left his ear and eye pro at home, right? So you're gonna let that
Damn.
man sit out there and ruin his and his son's day, or are you gonna hand him some ear pro and be like, you know what, those are my throwdowns. Keep them. I'm taking off. Hope you
Yeah.
guys have a great day, which is what I did. But and you talk about some things like that, and you can put those little tidbits on there. But yeah, if you were trying to pivot a channel, especially when it's the size that it already is, if you've got tens of thousands of subscribers and you just 180, yeah, it's going to be a hard day.
Hmm. It's like what they say, like steering an ocean liner. Like you're not gonna
Yeah.
just.
Yep.
It's not a Prius. The turn radius is not the best. So
Yeah.
I can definitely appreciate that, and I hope that people hear this conversation and understand that, like, hey, Mike is a whole lot deeper than the do bro gun stuff, and maybe have just a little bit a deeper appreciation for their own self. Because I tell myself, I'm literally sitting on the couch and I'm telling my wife, like, hey, you know what? Like I don't know if people realize I'm just a guy. Like I'm as normal as they come. Like I'm sitting here on the couch with my girls, just hanging out, wiping spit up
Yeah.
or vomit off the floor or cleaning up pee or whatever. Like I do normal stuff, and not that people act like I'm so much different, but just the reality is, guys like yourself, yeah, maybe because you've made it to a certain point, you get to have a little bit more freedom in your life and choosing what you want to do next, just a little bit.
Yeah.
But we are still like just normal people in the sense that we want to see the world get a little bit better, or maybe we're passionate about a certain thing, we get excited about a certain thing, or maybe something makes us sad. It's possible.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't get sad often, just sometimes. Yeah. Is it someone cutting onions? But
We all get emotional.
yeah, exactly. Um, and I guess since we're on the topic of video creation and channels and stuff like that, what's one piece of advice if there is a young content creator in the audience, or maybe myself, I'll take it. One piece of advice that you would give, or maybe there's multiple pieces that you would want to give to that content creator to get started, whether it's a gun tube or something else.
Um, buy the best audio and video equipment you can and just start recording. Make a plan, make a script, and start recording. All of our videos sucked when we began. None of us were professionals. They get better with time, and then continue to upgrade your audio and visual and lighting because that will make such a big difference. And a lot of people try to do things on the cheap, which can be done, but the best equipment that you can afford, realistically, and then plan your script out, plan your video out methodically, and then hit that record button. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. I've screwed up so many things, and that petrifies some people. But it's like I put those messed up reloads in videos because one, it just makes me laugh, and I mean nobody's a machine. The best shooters in the world aren't 100% on reloads or shooting or anything. So don't be afraid to make mistakes either. That's probably if I would have heard that when I first started of get the best equipment you can, and then as soon as you start making money, upgrade your equipment to an extent, you'll level up, level up, level up, and then there's a point where you don't need to spend any more money. But it's not cheap either. Like you can do it on a cell phone these days, but 3, 5 years ago that wasn't the case. Um, but those are the best things I would say to somebody. And don't be fake. We can tell. I mean, anybody can tell when you're faking it. You know?
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic advice. Thank you for sharing that with even myself in the audience. I'll take it. Shoot, um, yeah, I thought it was interesting that you said what you said about recording on a cell phone because I know Jonathan from Tactical Toolbox,
Yep.
really cool guy. If you guys aren't following him, like he does some,
Yeah.
his videos are a little bit different because he's talking about, I guess, building platforms that maybe aren't super conventional, oftentimes, anyways. And if you're at all a tinkerer, I think you'll really enjoy what he does. But
Yeah.
I know when he first got started, he was working on was it one of the iPhones, and as he started making money, he upgraded. And at the time, I think that was okay. But I found that if you do want to stand out and be presentable for whether it's a brand or even be able to stand up and make content that somebody won't hate right after watching Mike's video, you kind of have to get some decent stuff. Like if your video's got just pure grainy, terrible
Yeah.
ISO, horrible lighting, like people are gonna look at it and be like, man, what's going on? Like, what am I looking at? I can't see. You know, like it's gonna be hard.
Yeah. But you'll also be surprised on how willing the audience is to give people a chance though too. And then
Yeah,
they want to see that progression. That's like, I think personally by human nature, we want to see other people succeed in things. I mean, I know I do. And I had so much help from Jonathan, from, Johnny B. Um, there's a lot of guys that really helped me out, when I was really new.
hmm
And then I had some friends that were professional photographers and videographers that helped me out as well. And
yeah,
that made all the difference. But you can start on a phone. I did it too. My first several videos were filmed on a Samsung S8 or something like that, like an oldie.
oof, the
So
S8. I had an S8.
yeah,
I think
yeah, it was like
when did I start on? I think I started on an S7. Yeah,
yeah,
that was like my first like real big boy cell phone. Yeah,
yeah.
before that I had like a Windows phone or something crazy. Like because
Oh
I kind
yeah,
of like to
yeah,
be different. I'm different. I'm hipster
yeah.
or something like that. I don't know. Man, so I've found that there's like a ton of questions in here for you. There's at least like 8 or 9 really good ones that I'm just like, yeah, we gotta make sure you get at least
Yeah.
some of these. But before we do that, we do need to just take a moment and thank Obsidian Tactics for really being that company that I can rely on for all my gear, whether it's shot timers to ammo to things that I can't talk about selling on Instagram. So go to obsidiantactics.com and make sure that you use the code Armed Atlas because you'll get free shipping. If you ever bought anything from anywhere on the internet other than Amazon, you realize that shipping costs a lot of money, sometimes like 10, $12 to ship something that's small like this piece of camera equipment. So go over to obsidiantactics.com, check them out. And at this moment, we're actually going to allow you guys to enter for the free ammo giveaway. If you guys are live with us right now or watching the replay before this thing actually shuts off, make sure that you enter the code free into the chat. So all you have to do is go into the chat and type the word free. And we'll go ahead and collect that data and announce it next time we do a live show, which won't be next week. It'll be the week after that with an organization that talks about children and being safe with firearms. So make sure you're here for that one where we announce the giveaway. If you're not there, how will we know that you? How will you know you won? So make sure that you're there, and go ahead and type the word "free" into the chat, and then we'll go from there and make sure you win. If you are on the podcast side, there is a way for you to enter. You can actually go ahead and share share the show with somebody, whether it's in a group chat or your Instagram or your Facebook, or can you share it on TikTok? I don't know. And go ahead and just type, send me an email at info at costlymedia.com. I'll go ahead and put that in the show description so you can see that, info at costlymedia.com. Just send me a screenshot. Let me know what you did, and we'll make sure you have a chance to win as well if you're on the podcast side. Hey, so let's go ahead and get back to the show and go from there. Mike, so there are a ton of questions here for you, and I'm really hoping we can get through at least a few of them before we kind of hit the regular time for the show. And if we got to go over a few minutes, I hear that's okay. Your manager said it's cool. So, so DJ Play Nice, who is awesome running as a moderator for us today, said, "What is the weakest part of the firearms industry / strongest part?" And I guess you can kind of an open-ended question.
The weakest part is marketing.
Yeah.
They do not do great at marketing as a whole. The strongest part of the firearms industry are its end users because we drive them and beg them and yell at them to give us more and better.
Yeah, you're absolutely
Yeah,
right. I would agree, definitely, because the end user base is so diverse, and it's guys who literally never
yeah,
shoot the gun. They just like the way it looks, and then there's guys who will run it into the mud and say like, "Hey, you know what? The gun would be so much better if we could actually just try to get an optics platform that was more universal." And so we have Springfield in their Echelon that just came out, which has an optics platform that actually seems to be working at this point. Seems to be working, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody who complains that it didn't work for them, but so far so good from what I'm seeing. I don't know if you've experienced that particular modularity in their platform. Have you tried one optic or more than one on their gun yet?
yeah. I've got it. I've had it for a while. I'm waiting until I get another. I'm waiting until I have 1,000 rounds through it to do my initial video because it's a new offering.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it basically took all of the little things we wanted from other names and jammed it into one pistol. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I
That's all
tell
I'm
you
gonna say
what.
before the video, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you are interested in hearing Mike's thoughts on the Springfield Echelon, he's not doing like what a lot of these guys tend to do and run 300-400 rounds through the gun and then say it's good. He's taking it through the 1,000 rounds, and definitely go ahead and check it out. So there's another question. What is your round count to determine if something's ready for everyday carry? I suppose for your personal guns, how many rounds are you putting through it before you're like, okay, this is good?
It really depends on the gun, and what the history of it is. If it's a brand new gun, fresh on the market, I might want to get 1,000 rounds through it just to see if there's any hiccups at all. If it's, a Glock, a Smith and Wesson, or one of those brands that I know and trust, I might go out and run 50 or 100 rounds and be completely happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience with manufacturing, whether it's on the automotive side or weapon side, usually if something's going to fail because of a problem, it's either going to fail right up front, like almost immediately, or deep into the cycle of operation. And I think that's pretty well proven in the firearms industry now, but it really just depends on the brand, and if it's a brand new offering, because anytime you offer a new pistol, there's going to be problems. There's going to be things to iron out. It's like a brand new car. You get that first year car, how many TSBs, technical service bulletins, or recalls are there? It's the
Mm.
same thing. It's a manufactured product.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, like, James from TFB TV, he was also at GunCon. So if you guys aren't at
Yeah,
GunCon next year, I'm gonna be very disappointed. It was a great event. There's a lot of cool
I'll
people
be there.
there.
Yeah,
I
I'll
mean,
be there.
I'll be there unless something crazy
Yeah.
happens and I just can't be there. But Mike said he'll be there, and if you guys want to go dressed up as Mike, that would be hilarious. Just cosplay as tactical considerations. So James, he said, or he was talking to the president or one of the guys who works for Beretta,
Yeah.
and he was saying that they tested their gun. I forget exactly which one it is. I think it's the one with the rotating barrel, and it's got. He said their standard for performance on that gun was like 40,000 rounds without parts breakage, or something like that. And I'm just like, golly, that's a lot of rounds before
Yeah.
expecting something to fail. A CZ could never pass that. At least some of their fancier offerings,
Yeah.
where it's like 6,000 rounds and the trigger's going to break on you. I'm like, oh wow, that's terrible. Are there are there guns that you've run that you expected to just do really really well because it came from a Glock or something like that, or a high end manufacturer, and you got a couple thousand rounds in, or maybe like didn't even quite make it to 1,000 rounds, and you're like, wow, this extractor is just completely done, or something like that.
Um, Out of ones that I expected to do really well,
Mm-hmm.
I've not had like the mechanical complete failure where I was like, oh my God, this is catastrophic. But
Mm-hmm.
I've had ones where I expected more, or I expected like, I don't know, maybe if it was the hype, or maybe I watched other people's reviews and I thought that they were going to be like better than they were, and I was really disappointed in
Yeah.
how it turned out.
Yeah.
Um,
But isn't that the hard part about like the marketing hype that we can sometimes be
yeah,
accidentally a part of, where it's like, hey, I'm trying out this gun, I'm trying to make this an exciting video, and in the attempt to let you know that this is an interesting gun, I kind of oversold a thing that I'm not even paid to sell you, or maybe they are.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had ones where I was kind of like, like meh about them, or I'm gonna try this, and that actually was the Walther PDP. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try that. It's a new gun, and flat out is my favorite strike fired handgun. Didn't expect it, and that's after the first one I went to pick up at the shop. It had to be sent back to the factory, or it didn't even make it out the store.
That's horrible. That
And then
is.
it turned out that I was just like, once I started running it, I was like, it just fit, and I was like, this is the one. Like that's it. It's in the striker, the poly
Hmm.
market, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's actually still a few more questions. So let me make sure that we can get through them. One of them was, how do you go about talking about firearms with coworkers, or I guess maybe it's not like a coworker, but maybe like family, friends, people in your community that aren't like gun people.
Yeah. Um, I don't tiptoe around it at all. Period. I don't really kind of hold back when I'm talking about something. In fact, my friends have always said, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Mm,
I'm not gonna be like, you know, arrogant or be an a-hole about it, but I will just be very factual and very upfront and based on training experience, history, all that stuff, and that is it. Now, if you don't like that, that's on you. But I'm not gonna, I don't sugarcoat things, when it comes to talking about guns or a right. You're gonna get a full dose of what it should be from me.
that's right. Fair enough. And I think it's weird because our culture wants us to be like agreeable and let's not get into fights. And I can tend to be that way myself. I try to be
Yeah,
diplomatic, but at some point you do have to just kind of let people know what you are not going to tolerate in a conversation, or
yeah,
um, giving people information unedited so that they can make a decision for themselves. And that might be more helpful than being like, well, it sounds like you're not ready for this conversation about guns,
yeah,
but you have a lot of opinions and you're sharing it openly. So I'm just not going to talk to you. Which,
yeah.
if it's going to get crazy, maybe you don't. But
And it's all about delivery too, how you
yeah,
deliver it. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. So somebody wants to know about your hot rod situation. He said, okay, hold up a few moments about those hot rods. What you got? Are you at liberty to share? What do you like working on?
yeah. So right now, the ones I have left, I mean, I've probably owned like 45 different cars.
Holy
So the ones I have
cow.
left right now are my 78 C10, which is slammed, and getting ready to do an LS swap on that, even though it's already been completely rebuilt. Next up is a 56 Studebaker short bed, one owner car, and then I've had tons and tons and tons of stuff. I grew up building hot rods with my father, so
Yeah, okay, that makes
um,
sense.
I'm a huge fan of anything Car wise, 69 and down, trucks 87 and down. When it comes to the Chevys, but I'm a big bow tie fan of Chevy stuff. But you get into the 50s and 60s and even the 40s and the 30s, those are pretty hard to mess a car up back then. They're all pretty cool. And then I love modern stuff too, but you just can't work on modern stuff. It's one,
Yeah.
these hands don't fit anywhere to work on the new modern cars, but it's it's just not the same as building big old V8 or supercharged or turbocharged motors, and so that's what I got now. And we've had the Chevelles, the GTOs, Corvettes, the 50s and 60s Corvettes. We've had all that stuff. So
Nice. Wow. I guess
yeah.
that's why you and Jonathan from Tactical Toolbox get along because he's also kind of a gearhead.
Oh, yeah, he loves it. Yeah, his little
Yeah.
Honda Civic is insane, dude. I think that
Yeah.
thing is at like 550 wheel horsepower now or something.
Jeez. How was that?
Yeah.
That can't be street legal, right? I'm just playing.
Debatable.
Yeah. I mean, who's asking? You a cop?
Yeah. Who's asking? I ain't asking.
Right. So he was basically asking what you like working on. But why do you think so many gun guys are also car nerds?
Um, there's a lot of crossover there mechanical wise,
Yeah.
but there's I think a lot of people that grew up working on cars and building hot rods grew up in a very specific kind of household, you know, um, maybe a little bit more constitutionalist kind of thing, maybe a little bit more, rural, and that makes a difference, city and rural makes a huge difference on where your gun rights fall, or that idea of gun rights fall. Look at your major cities where they're like, oh my God, whereas in a rural environment, cops 30 minutes away, you take care of yourself.
Man, yeah, you're absolutely right, and people really forget that. And I think we talked about this last show, but even in the city, like if you're in a situation where there's just like something crazy going on, whether it's some sort of weather emergency or, I mean,
Yeah,
I've been in places like more, I would say urban Virginia, where because it's like a snowstorm and they're just not prepared for that kind of ice. Guess what? If something bad happened, if you're on the side of the road, they probably can't get to you for a while, and maybe they might not come for you for a long time
yeah.
actually. So imagine, so
Society's become far too reliant on government agencies for help.
right, like you want men with guns to come deal with the man who has a gun? Like, come on, like you got to
Yeah,
handle that yourself. And then, but you're also anti-gun, so you don't want men with guns, but yet
yeah.
you want men with. Got you.
The
I'm
schizophrenia is real.
I'm confused. It's like show me that
Yeah,
meme with the lady with the numbers popping up on screen. Where is that even from? I don't even
yeah,
get the reference. Oh my
yeah.
gosh, bro, it's insane. So somebody said no CZ slander. Come on, man. It is what it is. CZ does it to themselves, or at least with those particular units. What are those? The 75s? I can't remember. Um,
Yeah.
and ooh, this is a question. We're gonna actually we'll start with this one. Uh, what new guns are coming out that you're excited to test? Anything that's not under NDA, obviously.
The Echelon, which I have, the Oracle Arms 2311. That's a pretty exciting little platform.
You got
Um,
one yet, or
no, I don't have it. Did you shoot it at GunCon? So it's
I did?
basically a
Yeah.
2011 based on SIG P320 parts. Um, there is a, I'm under NDA with a couple companies right now, but there are some very cool rifle designs that a company's working on right now, both a bolt action and then a intermediate gas system. There's some swappable barrel stuff like in the field, changeable barrel stuff that's going on with a couple companies. Um, Pistol wise, I think that 2311 is probably the thing I'm most interested in right now.
Coolest gun of 2023. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it hits the street and runs, that's all that matters because
Right.
it was pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah. And I know that very first batch at SHOT Show, there was some questions about the build
yeah,
quality and stuff like that. And then when I ran it, I had no problems.
yeah,
Although the ejection pattern was a little shallow, but
yeah.
as
Well,
long
that
as it
the ones at
cycles.
SHOT Show were all 3D printed parts in there. They hadn't
Oh,
finalized
really?
everything because I, I I know the guy that makes the guns. I've had a relationship with them before Oracle Arms existed. So I knew about that 4-ish years ago when that
Wow.
project started because it started out as something very different and molded into that.
I wonder why they didn't go with Glock mags. Are you able to? Do you know anything about that?
Um, I didn't actually ask that
Yeah,
specific question.
yeah.
Um, so
I plan on asking that whenever I get a chance to talk with them again. Because we did a video on that. It did pretty well, and I'm hoping, and I don't know if I'll put it on this channel or the main Armed Atlas channel, but to get one of the guys, whether it's Nate or somebody who works in
yeah,
marketing, to come on and just kind of help kind of sort through some of the best questions and get information on the street for those who want it. For the gun geeks
yeah.
out there, the nerds. Um, but ooh, that's a good question that just came in. Let's ask this. What are your thoughts on modern masculinity, egos and stoicism? More or less, how are you feeling about the modern man and masculinity and the standards that we have for ourselves and that we don't follow?
Uh, well, the testosterone level's been crashing.
I was
Your
just talking to my
average
wife about
21 year
that.
old's got the testosterone level of a 70-year-old man. Um, People confuse masculinity with being an a-hole, right? To me, masculinity is doing what exactly men are supposed to do, take care of people, fight for what's right, protect your family, protect your community, take care of your family, take care of your loved ones, take care of your wife, your girlfriend, whatever, and setting an example of being a good person. And I think a lot of that has been torched, whether it's social media or movies or all this propaganda that they're pumping into kids' cartoons now and stuff. And I think it puts, a societal structure in a very bad place. And that's not to say that women aren't very capable to do a lot of things that men can do, but genetically we're different. And we just flat out are. And, it's like the old saying goes too, though, is you find me the strongest man in the world, and I'll show you a very strong woman behind that man. Um, you know, so it seems to be that certain people or certain ideologies want to mesh and mold masculinity with something that's not supposed to be or shouldn't be. And I think that puts us as a country and as a, species in a very bad place. Very bad place.
Yeah, I think you're onto something, especially when you just do what you're supposed to do. Be the person you
Yeah.
say you're going to be, and you don't have to be just a cruel person in order to express your masculinity. Like that's just not cool or acceptable. So let's hit these last two questions and we're gonna bug out of here. I think we've covered so much ground that we could probably write a book on everything you said, really. And I just want to say thanks for coming on, man. This has been great.
Yeah.
Last two
Anytime,
questions
man.
and we'll bug out. Um, and let's just add this to the show. Any plans on extending content such as lasers hunting, bushcraft, or do you think you found your sweet spot in making content?
So I've kind of kicked back and forth doing some videos on, different training and kind of tactic style things, but that's really kind of not what my channel was built on. So you almost have to do that on a different channel or do it on somebody else's channel. Plus, I've been out of the military to the point where um, other people that are out there are so much more versed and up to speed because the longer the time frame is since you've been operational, the less relevant you are. And that's why even in the special ops community, when dudes get out, no matter whether they're Delta, SEALs, Ranger Recon, Ranger, whatever, you've got like a lifespan, right? From because things change so fast, tactically, weapon systems, things like that, that I don't think that's really my place anymore to teach things like that. And I stopped teaching period probably about 2.5, 3 years ago. Firearms, defensive tactics. I used to teach all kinds of stuff. I don't do any of it anymore just because there's so many people that are so much more up to speed and relevant with better experiences that are more recent, and that's just kind of how I kind of view it. Now I want to go to other people's classes.
No, that's a good point. And I suppose how do we do a better job of just me asking of pointing people towards great training resources? Because unless you're literally like highly strategic, like you're not getting the kind of love that you probably should for a lot of those guys who are just doing a fantastic job of teaching. um, whether it's big or small, because there's a lot of guys who are
Yeah.
doing a good job. Like we, I don't know
Yeah.
if there's an answer for that, but I think we got to do a little bit better about directing people towards great training resources because I can't train like that. I mean,
Yeah.
and you could, but you're not in the loop as much as those other guys are.
Yeah. And that was a goal of mine. So I had started a series of videos like that, and I actually went out to California and trained with Mike Levy from Knockout Lights. And
Oh,
my whole
he's great.
goal was to go around the US and go to classes of dudes that I think would be very good to push to other people. Because just because you're in the military or law enforcement doesn't mean you're going to be a good instructor. And just because you didn't do any of those doesn't mean you are not going to be a good instructor when it comes to something. Competitive shooters could probably teach us dudes in the tactical world how to shoot faster, better, more accurately. Whereas we could teach them like, hey, this is how you go around a corner and not get shot. you know, um, but that kind of fell off because of the whole, past 2 years of everything being shut down. And I've kind of debated whether I want to pick that back up and go train with different people again and then make videos on that training school, um, to get that out there because people all around the United States want good training. They want to know who to go to because there are so many bad instructors out there that just don't have the skill level or shouldn't be teaching, period. Um, and I really want to focus on doing that in the near future, um, to help people figure out where to spend their money because it is not cheap to seek out good training.
Wow. So that's a fantastic answer, and I think there was somebody in the comments who was really giving you kudos on the answer that you had previously about really understanding your place in this whole thing. Is you're making great content, and that's great. But should you be initiating some of these classes and trying to teach people, even though it's you're not going to be able to give them exactly what they should, for what they're paying for, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's a really humble perspective, especially because the pride in a man would say like, hey, you know, I know what I need to know, and I could do a little bit of research and put together a
Yeah.
great class. I could do a great class. I could do it better than you, but you're not doing that. So,
Yeah.
kudos to you.
And teaching firearms and pistols and rifles and stuff is easy. It's the tactics and the smoothness and that flow that you
Mm-hmm.
get with years of experience and years of working with the same teams. And a lot of those lessons that change tactics were learned in blood, right?
Yeah.
So now I rely on others to teach me that stuff.
Yeah.
And I will send people to them. Like, you need to go to this guy and learn from this guy or something.
Yeah. Um, Here's the last question that we got. And as a gun tuber, what innovations would you like to see in the industry? And what do you think would be beneficial? Rifles, pistols, belt holsters, etc.
Innovation, one of those things that we never stop asking for. Well, first of all, we got to realize that we are living literally one of the best times when it comes to
Oh
the
yeah.
options that we have: lights, lasers, optics, scopes, and we have so much right now to be happy for. This thing sitting right behind me, actually, that shoulder, is a brand new system from Blackout. I'll be getting to work on that. What I would like to see is, I think it would be really cool if a company, and I know a couple companies are working on this, and there is one that already kind of has something for rifles, would be to have a quick release interchangeable barrel system where you can go from one caliber to the next in, that 1 minute, 2 minute time frame and maintain, an accuracy that's reasonable, one MOA depending on the system or whatever. And I know that the modern sniper rifle contract that went out, there is a system like that where it changes between, I think, three different barrels and maintains one MOA or better accuracy. I think in the AR platform, that would be amazing and very cool because now you don't have to have 12 different rifles. You can just have 12 different barrels and just quick swap them in a couple different bolts or whatever. Pistol wise, um, that one's a little bit tougher because we just have so much between optics and triggers. I would like to see more companies do what Walther did with the PDP Pro SD, where it's the complete package out of the box: performance trigger, magwell, mag extensions, um, the higher sights for the optics already, or even SIG to the extent where the manufacturer is offering all of these customization things from the manufacturer. I think that if other companies would start doing that, I think that's really where the next change for pistols is, along with what like Springfield and Sig are doing with the chassis systems, where you just take it out, put it in the next frame. Now you go from compact, subcompact, full size, whatever you want. I think that's really where the market's going. At least I hope it is, because that's where we all benefit from that innovation and get to save a little bit of money if we want to have different size pistols or rifles.
Wow. So people are loving these answers. First of all, you talk people, a lot of grown men talking about how they become fans. Good job, Mike. Seducing men over here. What's going on, Mike?
Hey
So
man, birds of a feather flock together. We all like the same stuff, man. Guns,
yeah,
cars, you know.
yeah, straight up. I love it. My last question for you, and this one could take a second, so just kind of brace yourself. How can people find you?
Oh yeah, that's real hard to answer. Everything is at Tactical Considerations. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. My own website is tacticalconsiderations.com. That's where I host all of the build pages, all the videos, all the links, discount codes, all that stuff is right there and readily available for everybody. And that's kind of how I keep my channel going. Same thing with Jonathan. We rely on people to, if they like our content, they can use those links, and we get a kickback if they want to buy a barrel or a gun or whatever. We don't just sell anything, so I got to clarify that. But um, that's pretty much where you can find me, all those places. And then if I'm out on the street, it's kind of funny. Some people have like messaged me that they didn't want to come up and say hi because they didn't know me. It's pretty weird to get recognized in public, but I literally have hang out and had lunch with somebody that recognized me from the channel. We were at the restaurant. I was like, "Hey man, come over, let's have lunch." So don't ever afraid to say hi to us or come up to us in public either and talk, because we're all about that. That's the whole reason we're there.
Man, thank you for sharing that and letting people know how they can really just get in touch. One of the moderators in the chat just went ahead and dropped your link for those who are really interested. Go ahead, hop over there, hit subscribe, and watch a few videos, because if you subscribe and you fail to watch some videos, that sends bad signals to YouTube. So make sure you watch one or two or three. Help the man out. And of course, if you see something that you really like, be sure to support the people who support Mike, and make it possible for him to spend a Sunday afternoon with us on this show, and just go buy something. It's not going to hurt you. So, guys, thank you so much, and Mike, thank you very much. Really appreciate you just coming on and spending time, being real cool.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's a good show. I know it was a little hard getting me here because of how busy things are, but I'm happy to do it, man.
Yeah, well, there've been people who made it a little harder, so I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
So, guys, thank you so much for coming on, for watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Are you on the podcast side? Are you on the YouTube side? Let me know. Shoot me an email or a DM on the Instagram, instagram.com/@armed_atlas. And just let me know how you enjoy the show. What are you enjoying about it? Do you have a suggestion for maybe a guest who you want to see? You could drop it in the live chat right now before the show ends. Or, of course, shoot me a DM, or better yet, share it in your Instagram stories, or make a dedicated post just talking about something that we discussed. Costly Conversations is more than just me and a guest. It's you and people in your life. So keep these conversations going. Make sure you are invested. There's plenty of links everywhere, from the Patreon to all the different things. Patreon is Armed Atlas, all the things. It really doesn't matter. Make sure you're part of it. And guys, make sure that you're checking out our guest, Tactical Consideration. I see some of you have joined the giveaway by typing free into the live chat. We're going to announce that on the next show, so be here for that. And until next time, keep it costly.